no matter what arrangement you put in place, you got to give power to somebody to act and to protect the public purse. It appears that we've given all the power to the president, to the executive, and they've not been the most patriotic people that we need to go to do this, which means that responsibility must sort of whistle down to the people.
We need to start calling ourselves to order, being accountable for ourselves, be our neighbors' keepers. And until we're able to go retrace our steps, because in the past, the culture, the tradition, the African tradition is that you know your neighbor. So somebody cannot go up one day and then suddenly you don't know what he's doing. He's built a house, he's driving a car, and you cannot say this is a source of income. We hear of all sorts of things recently now, youth doing ritual killing to make money, all sorts. So really and truly for me, I think we need to take a step back, go back to the roots, from the family unit, and start making things right.
It's interesting to know that there are other countries in Africa more corrupt than Cameroon. I used to think that if the continent organized a trophy for corruption, Cameroon will win back-to-back the continental trophy. I honestly, I'm hearing this from Ghana and I'm hearing this from South Africa, and it's mind-blowing. I used to think that we're on top of it, because nothing gets practically done in Cameroon if you don't exchange envelopes.
My name is Joseph Kwaku, and I'm the chair of Voice One Africa. And Voice One Africa is a Pan-African youth movement committed to youth empowerment, committed to the Pan-African agenda. That's the United States of Africa. We are attaining this, or we aim to attain this from the bottom up by networking or connecting the youth of Africa across their different countries, and also creating opportunities for capacity building and for economic empowerment, social empowerment as well. So that's what we're about. And the conversations that we have creates an opportunity towards this end that I just described. Today, we are having the second episode of the Anti-corruption Syndicate. Our conversation is aimed towards integrity building and exposing corruption as it is in our various countries. So these conversations are aimed towards kind of dissecting the whole corruption subject, because we've been speaking about corruption. We've heard, in fact, when I was young, I'm a Ghanaian. I grew up in Ghana, and I've lived in Ghana. In fact, most of my life I've been in Ghana. And so growing up in Ghana, right from childhood, I used to hear about corruption. Ex-President Rawlings, of blessed memory, he always spoke about probity and accountability and all of that. So, like, the subject of corruption has been existent for a very long time. However, in this time, we still have issues about corruption. And so it tells us that there's something that needs to be done. I mean, obviously, we are not doing something right, or there is something that's missing. And being the future leaders, or being the ones that are going to bring about change, that's the youth of Africa. We are the largest stakeholders on the continent, and we are actually the ones that are going to bring change. We believe that having conversations about these subjects, and also trying to understand and make meaning of what we see and how we are involved and what we can contribute to change the narrative, as it were. So this is the reason for this conversation. And today I'm excited because this is the second episode, and we have Tanzania represented, Peter Mbando from Tanzania. We have Bright Soul once again from Ghana, the Ghana Anti-corruption Coalition. And we have my friend Irene Ola from Nigeria, everybody will be introducing themselves. That Devashni is from South Africa, and we're going to have this conversation. Gerard is here. Gerard was one of our key panelists for the first episode. Gerard is here. Chugo is also here, part of Voice One Africa team. So you're all welcome, and we're going to commence the conversation with opening remarks, right? So for our opening remarks, we'll have the panelists introduce themselves to give us an understanding of who they are. So you introduce yourself and then you give us your opening remarks.
Okay, my name is Peter Mbando. I'm the activist, SDGs, and activist in, I advocate for digital rights and digital inclusion, especially in internet governance. And I'm also the founder and the executive director of Digital Agenda for Tanzania Initiative. And also I'm working in a number of organizations as a focal point person, as well as a consultant. And my passionate is all about how I engage myself and my community in utilizing the peace we have in our community, national and continental at large, to stimulate development. That's what I've been thinking. And especially right now we are shifting into a digital economy and also space economy, although we are not there as Africans in space economy, but digital economy is where my concentration right now in the digital space or digital diplomacy. I'm also co-chair of Disabilities Cluster of SIOF, Southern African Youth Forum. I'm advocating the same issues, the gap of young people, youth, women, how to engage at the regional level, regional bodies, the inclusion of them to be heard. I would like to thank for this opportunity, and especially it's the ongoing concern in Africa when young people are being engaged in different circumstances which are encircled by politicians who are not implementing the policies, but they are just saying in public about policies. But then for young people like us, the generation that we are advocating right now, if the generation desires more about implementation, they are so ambitious. And the ambitious is all about not to go against the government. It's all about to see what is being done by the government. And remember, young people, as we are representing our fellow youth, we have been exposed in this kind of ghosts, we can say political ghosts, that we think that those big luxury cars, luxury life is better for few to maintain the cause until they are retired. So imagine a graduate thinking about having big cars in a short time, luxurious life, while forgetting to resolve issues which are really big issues, problems, challenges like water, lack of transport, reliable transport, telecommunication, education system. So they end up being encircled by this politician that they are promising them to give a good life, rather than for young people to use their education, like what Nyerere said. Young people, they are supposed to get education, then come back to the community and resolve issues, challenges which are hindering development in the community. For instance, in Tanzania, I'll take the case of Tanzania. We have big three issues here since the colonization and after colonization. It's all about diseases, poverty, and illiterate. Imagine a young people comes with the innovation and he wants to pitch their innovation to the government or other stakeholders because he or she is looking for solution, but they end up dragging him or her to do other things or to stop the innovation and ending up the dream. And they sell the same ideation to other companies, multilateral companies or foreign companies, just because they want a piece of bread and forgetting that the dream of this lady or dream of this young boy is going to change the country. So Africa has been a land more than gold, a land of young people with brains, and those brains are being drained to be used, their ideas, they're being used to other countries, to develop other countries. And then they come to other form, we as Africans to start purchasing for the same idea, while it was supposed to be implemented in our country. It's just because of the corruption at the top. So there is no coordination of African ideation. The idea of the traditional African, they've just forgotten. You ask young people right now, what after your time in the evening, what do you do for a living? They end up watching Netflix, and they're watching. It's not bad, but they are watching Netflix. Those are ideas of other people. Movies. Instead of telling these young people, can you write your own script? And then write your own script on the way you see the world, the way you see your community, and employ that script that will give you more, will challenge the community, and will give you more even self-employment, and you give more employment also to other people. You own your own company. You know what they end up? They are saying the government is not supporting. They are forgetting that they are also the government. Because I cannot say the government should do this, should do that, while I'm also part of the government. So wow. The process of implementing good policies, we have good policies in Africa, but the process of implementing good policies, when it touches all those three organs, let's say executive, judicial, and the legislature, when you take the police and ups, it ends to maybe to the legislature, judiciary, or legislature. Let's say the legislature, the parliament. You know what happens? It ends on the paper, and those guys, they just think about money, where they'll get money, generating money. And when you go up to the last stage at the executive, the presidential. You meet maybe the president to stimulate this idea, the police, for the benefits of many. Some of people will try to distract you. They say, you are young. What is this? We need money. So I can touch that for a short while, then we'll go into discussion, but it's very, very painful for now for young people to engage in a riot, in a different kind of hazard. I can say had a dangerous environment, the scope that we have right now. They're engaging in terrorism, they're engaging in extremism, they're engaging in so many because of mental fatigue, because of over-ambitious, because of they are not patient anymore, and we have good policies but not implementing, and we end up accusing young people, they are driving other young people, recruiting them to different groups, dangerous groups, while we are forgetting ourselves that we have the role to play and to harmonize the situation. And the peace that we have right now can be used only for development and sustainable development, because we have already peace. Why don't we have sustainable development? That's the question we have to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow. Peter, I think you've touched on a couple of issues. So from your opening remarks, you've spoken about the fact that you highlighted that in Tanzania, you see that there's the issue about disease, there's the issue of poverty, and there's the issue of illiteracy. And however, the youth, so you're positioning this in the context of youth being over ambitious, as you mentioned, and also that there's a fact that, so the corruption as far as youth is concerned, because there's over ambition among the youth. There's also, that's to say that the youth are not patient anymore. We want to get the big cars and the big houses. After right out of school, you just want to have all these goodies, so to speak. And also, these kind of frustrations lead youth into extremism and other things. Thank you very much. You also mentioned that our politicians have not really delivered on the promises that they gave. So they say one thing during their campaigns, but when it's time for delivery, there are excuses. However, they live the luxurious lives that we see. So thank you very much. Ariola is from Nigeria, and then she's going to introduce herself and then give us her opening remarks.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good
Evening,
afternoon.
depending on where you're joining from.
Yes.
My name is Ariola Surabelo. I work with an African Strategic and Policy Research Group as program coordinator. I coordinate all the programs for the organization. But on the side, I'm also a human resource manager, and I also do recruitment and staff benefits. And then I also administer a private scholarship for certain foundation, Abu Kabir Ali Foundation. Now, to the crop of the matter today. So we talk about corruption. Most times, when people say corruption, we tend to look at government. But I always ask myself, who is government? It's not Hydra-headed. They are individuals like myself, yourself, and any other human being. They have relations, their fathers, their mothers. They are like every human being. And yes, corruption is in Nigeria, just like we have it in every part of the world. But sadly, because we have a system such that nobody holds anyone accountable. And so people have a leeway, they tend to get away with misbehavior, simple misbehaviors. So for me, I want to start from the smallest unit of any society, which is the family. You look at an average family, and everybody has a role: the father, the mother, and the children. But from the role everybody is supposed to play, are we really playing the role we are meant to play? So you find some people. Let me take primary school, for instance. A child is meant to probably spend 6 years in primary school, but because you want that child to finish quickly, forgetting that there's a standard curriculum, you push that child to go and take the national common entrance, maybe say from basic 4, which is primary 4, and then if the child passes, you allow that child to skip basic 5 and basic 6, which is primary 5 and primary 6, and then move on to secondary school. Now you have forgotten that those 2 years that you have compressed, that child has missed something. The child can get to the secondary school and then start having academic problems. How do you now resolve this? So you find that those kind of children, because right from when they were young, they've been, for me, it's more like cheating. You understand? You now see parents going to pay to bribe teachers to teach them or to even take exams for them. Malpractice comes in. And that's the foundation. And before you know it, these individuals will grow up. What values do they have, sincerely? So look at elections in Nigeria, for instance, coming up very soon. And we have people that are contesting with all sorts of histories behind them, saying they've gone to school. You don't have any evidence that you've gone to school. That aside, now we have the National Union of Road Transport Workers in Nigeria, which coordinates the transport system. And you have people that mostly uneducated people. And at some point, there was an educated person who was standing as a PA for an uneducated person. And you ask yourself, how did he get to that level? But you see, for me, I don't want to point any fingers to government. Like I said, we are all individuals in this matter. We need to start from the roots, which is from the family. I have somebody who is an uncle and auntie who is contesting, who has some things I know. Uncle, auntie, what you're doing, I don't think this is right. You understand? We need to start calling ourselves to order, being accountable for ourselves, be our neighbors' keepers. And until we're able to go retrace our steps, because in the past, the culture, the tradition, the African tradition is that you know your neighbor. So somebody cannot go up one day and then suddenly you don't know what he's doing. He's built a house, he's driving a car, and you cannot say this is a source of income. We hear of all sorts of things recently now. Youth doing ritual killing to make money, all sorts. So really and truly for me, I think we need to take a step back, go back to the roots, form the family unit, and start making things right. Thank you.
Wow. I think that's spot on as well. I found this interesting when you were speaking. You brought in a cultural dynamic. And even though you were questioning the fact that we've lost certain cultural values in terms of holding people accountable, for For instance, if someone is making money, you don't know where the money is coming from. Technically, in the past, somebody would have questioned the person to find out where are you making this money from, you know. But also, you realize that as part of our culture, I don't know about Nigeria, but let's say in Ghana, younger people do not question older people, you know. So that kind of respect, there's this kind of hierarchy, and so if
We
the
have
older,
that here too.
yeah, so if the older
We
person
have
is
that
doing
here
something
too.
wrong, if the older person is doing something wrong, how is the person going to be corrected? And then also, especially when it comes to politics and leadership and stuff like that, it's not really about age. It's about functions and being held accountable. So I think I'm also feeling that maybe these cultural dynamics, for instance, holding our politicians responsible, and they'll say, you are a young guy or a young girl. How can you be speaking like that to your leader? Or how can you be questioning your leader? I know that I'm feeling that, I mean, it's a good cultural dynamic we brought into the picture. Thank you. Also spoke about the family unit, because to be sincere, all the people, and even us, we find ourselves in spaces, we are part of families, we are fathers, brothers, sisters, stuff like that. So all these things matter to us, and if we question ourselves and we make sure that things work within our spaces, then I think we'll be dealing with corruption in one way or the other. So thank you very much, Ariola, for your submission. We're going to go
You're
to
welcome.
Deveshni from South Africa. She also introduce herself and then make her presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Deveshni Maraya. I am from South Africa. I'm from an organization called the Maraya Foundation. And as a previous organization that I was involved with, what we did was capacity building for nonprofit organizations. So that was in 2019. So in 2020, when COVID hit, I got very involved with civil society. And I saw the linkage between civil society, community, corporate, and the city in terms of eThekwini and the Durban Metro. So one of the things that I find that is very critical with the conversation today is, it's critical to understand that the fiber of a country is its people, and the branches and the roots are the leaders. It's meant to connect us and keep us deep rooted, as the country is made up of its people. And its people rely totally on the leaders that choose and give the leaders the power to serve them. And our future as a country lies totally on the ability of both to build trust with each other. And trust is built on deliverance of that promises, their roles and their responsibilities. And our future also depends on the youth to lead that future. We as leaders in both the communities and our home shape them. Children learn not what you teach them in values and principles, they learn what they see. They are engraved with what they are taught in homes to accept as right and wrong. And in a world where we are fighting for just survival of basic needs, the line once drawn in the sand to determine that moral code has been erased. While some need the basics, others, their greed for more robs those that are actually in dire need. So the question that remains is, why does the youth play such a vital role in corruption? They shape our very existence. They are the ones that are molding, and we're expecting to see them in the country long after we are gone. And so once we're shaping them, we're shaping them in a generation that believes everything comes not at a price, but everything comes for free. So there's no longer this direction of working hard, being determined, striving for unachievable, and never giving up, and having dreams and ambitions. And we allow them to see the richness and the convenience that corruption comes with, without seeing the implications of the destruction to the economy and the hindrance of basic services. And, the rich just become richer, and their lifestyles flash before a generation hungry for value and recognition. The reality that we face is what we are. We then teach this generation of what is meant to be. And that is easily able to solve all one's desires, basically. That's what we're telling them. And when we should actually be concentrating on human values, I think that is where we've seriously lost the plot in being humans. And that is that ability to be compassionate, empathy, and everything that we as humans differentiates us from being instinctive animals. So I think the responsibility of being a citizen in any country it's a shift of what a country can do for you to what you can do for a country. Because I think the important thing to understand is that as citizens, we have a responsibility to our country. And what we need to do to make this country what we want to see is what we see in the headlines and how other countries perceive us and see us as. And we contribute to the economy, and it's the rights of its people to know why service delivery is not happening. And that, for me, is the reason why corruption is so important as a conversation and to dialogue around. Because remember, in South Africa, we've seen corruption as, unfortunately, something that is destroying the country in terms of service delivery. It's showing you the repercussions of that corruption. The greed hinders service delivery, whether it is your electricity, whether it is your water. And the sad reality is that even those that want to stand out and say this is wrong are killed as whistleblowers, are looked down upon. And so for me, it's that moral fiber of what we are as humans that we need to really start engraving into our youth and our kids. And they should be able to know, what, if I take somebody's pencil, it's stealing, it's wrong. If I force something on somebody to do it and yet they know that it's wrong, I'm then doing something that's wrong. So I think that's where we need to be so sincere in our attempts at curbing corruption, because the destruction that it comes with is to the common people that really need basic services that it's affecting. And the conversations will lead on, but that's where I just want to end and say, I'm really glad to be a part of a conversation of this nature. And I'm glad that there are people that are standing up in every country to say wrong is wrong and right is right. And we need to be able to make that decision and stand by it. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Devashni. Yeah, so it's great. That was a great submission. I mean, from these submissions, it's clear that there is corruption in these three countries that I've presented. In Tanzania, Peter spoke about it. In Nigeria, Arinola mentioned it, and then Devashni has also nailed it. Yes, Hamed on it as well. I'd like to remind participants that our chat function is very active. You can put in your comments, submit a question. There'll be a time that participants will be allowed to speak on mute and then speak. But for now, you can put in your comments, your thoughts in the chat. And I'd also want to mention that Voice One Africa is hosting this event, but we're doing this in collaboration with the Mandela Institute for Development Studies, Minds Africa. And Minds Africa in South Africa, it's an African leadership forum. So you can check out MINDS Africa. They give scholarships. They're also into Pan-Africanism, and it's a great organization. So we are honored and also privileged to be working with Minds Africa for this conversation. All right, so back to us again. From what we've heard, it's clear that there's corruption in all these countries. And there's this question I was thinking about, as in we've been speaking about corruption for a long time. So are there any benefits to corruption? I mean, this thing has been in existence for a long time. In your reflections or from experience, do you feel that there is any positive side to corruption? It's persisted for a long time. So I think it's only reasonable to think that, is there any positive side to it? The fact that this thing has persisted and it's been in the system for all these generations and it's still there, why is it persistent? Are there any benefits? So I'd like to find out from the panelists again. Any of you, the three of you, any of you, Gerald, you can as well contribute. Do you feel that there is any benefit to corruption? And if there isn't, then why is it persistent? Yeah, Gerald, you can go.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Joseph. My name is Gerard Saleh from Democratic Republic of the Congo. I am an anti-corruption activist, and I work with different organizations in my community. Okay, to answer your question, Mr. Joseph, corruption in general doesn't have any collective benefit, but it only have individual benefits, and those individual benefits do not help the community, do not help the country. The reason why we find corruption as a setback, it's like a setback, something that doesn't contribute to the development of the country. So everyone should stand against corruption. We should all build strategies that are against corruption in our countries, because the benefit is individual, it is not collective. That's my point of view.
Thank you. So the benefit is individual, it's not collective. Thank you so much for that. I just want to bring this to the fore. When I started advertising, we all started advertising this conversation I put it on my status, on my WhatsApp status, and someone messaged me. The person said, you know, because we started the ad with what Bright said in our previous conversation, that in Ghana, averagely, someone would have to pay a bribe of $500 in order to obtain employment in the public sector. Otherwise, the person's chance of being employed is less than 1%. So that was the beginning of the conversation. And this person sent me a WhatsApp saying that, and I quote, someone wants me to pay 6,000 Ghana cedi. I think 6,000 cedis would be about, let's say, $700. I mean, at the current rate, $700 for a job in the public sector. And I'm like, how do I pay that amount as an unemployed person? That amount is a huge capital for business. You know, so this is just pointing to the fact that what we are discussing is something that's really happening. You know, when there is extortion, or in order to be able to just get what is due you. Daveshni was talking about the basic needs. You know, we are talking about basic needs here. So that's leading me to our main discussion. How is corruption materializing in your various countries? In Nigeria, Arinola, you mentioned that there were people who, for instance, did not have qualification. They've said that they have these qualifications, but there's no record whatsoever to indicate that these people have any form of qualification. However, they are occupying positions. I don't know, how is corruption materializing itself in...
So thank you once again. I will go with Gerald's initial acceptance that yes and truly, corruption is more individualistic than collective. And like I said, what you find is that for people who eventually, grow up and get to key positions, because their background had already been shady, you understand? A lot of times they have support. They have people that protect them. So they are more like untouchables. They can do anything and get away with it. But under law, we have what they call rule of law. There's equality before the law, where everybody, whether you know somebody or you don't know anybody, and that's what you find in more advanced countries. The law is the law. Once you misbehave, so if you're the proper position abroad and you do something, okay, so let me take Bill Clinton, for instance, when there was that issue with Monica Lewinsky during his tenure, he came out and he actually apologized publicly. But what you find in Africa is that we do a lot of wrong things because of our value system, and we still flaunt it in people's faces when it's even obvious that it's wrong. So, yes, you are right. It does not benefit the larger masses. But because people eventually are kind of, their hands are tied, you understand? They become desperate. They sooner or later look away from those values they've had and go with these so-called people, maybe survival instinct and all whatnot. So it's like we are their mercy. If you cannot beat them, you join them. That's what typically happens in the long run. But for me, I think we can resolve this issue. You understand? Let's do things the right way for the benefit of the larger mass. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is really great what you've pointed out. And Deveshni also mentioned that it's like whistleblowers' lives are in danger. And I know this also is the case in Nigeria. When you stand up to these wrongs and you're speaking about it, you become a target. Even in Ghana, sometimes it happens. It's not sometimes, it is here. It's not as overt as it may be in Nigeria and other places, but in Ghana, we still have that kind of witch hunting. We have that here as well. Yes, to the rest of the panelists, same question. How is corruption materializing in your various locations?
Okay, I'm just going to speak quickly, right? The most important thing with regards to corruption and how it happens in South Africa is more around opportunity and opportunistic people. And what you'll find is that, especially around tenders, especially around consulting for larger corporates to government, that's where our biggest fraud is. And we're not talking about, unfortunately, a little bit of money. It runs into millions and billions of rands. And you'll find for us, it really hinders service delivery. And along the issues of basic service delivery, we're talking about electricity. We have constant load shedding. And we have inquiries. We have the Commission of Inquiries. We have specific teams set up to address all of the corruption. But the sad reality is the prolonged sessions of these, and it's aired on national TV, so you get to fully understand and listen and hear what people are speaking about and defending themselves against. But the sad thing for me is, how oblivious do they really think South African citizens are, where they do not know what is happening. It's like you're promising me something, you have enough capacity to roll out monies you've been given for, but at the end of the day, it's not being done. So for how long are you going to play this card? We don't have money, or we don't have this kind of infrastructure, yet you've been given so much of money to complete a particular infrastructure or task. And then you're left with sometimes doing it shoddy work, and then you get destruction of buildings, loss of lives. So it's that cycle of entrepreneurs here that in South Africa that really drives greed, power, and destruction to the economy and basic service needs to the communities. So that's how it's, and whistleblowing for us is a reality as well. And yes, people have been, lives have been lost as soon as they speak up and targeted. But you must understand something. You're a minority amongst a majority that want to continuously do the wrong. But there is no opportunity for you to stand up and say what you're doing is wrong. There is not that opportunity, because you looked upon like, what do you mean? If there's like 1 million going around and you're taking 100,000, please keep quiet. And it's sufficient. It's that 100,000 is sufficient, without realizing the reality is the work's not being done. That's the saddest thing. The work is not being done, and that money is coming from taxpayers. So who are you actually stealing from? You're stealing from the South African citizens. So yeah, that's my response. Thank you.
May I say something?
Yeah, is it chat night? Yeah.
Yes.
Introduce yourself and then.
My name is Divine Nchamukong. I am from Cameroon, from the English part of Cameroon. I run an online broadcast platform called Chat Night Africa. Unfortunately, well, I'm in the United States now. I'm connecting from Maryland. I've been here in the United States for about 23 years now. I love to connect with my fellow brothers and sisters from different countries. Unfortunately, I didn't know about this until about an hour ago. So I was struggling to put myself together, push aside a few other things I needed to do. I'm preparing for a broadcast tomorrow, so I was doing a lot of stuff. It's been hectic for me. But I said, if my brothers and sisters are going to come and talk about this issue, which in my view is worse than cancer in Africa, then I should take part in the discussion, however little or limited. It's interesting to know that there are other countries in Africa more corrupt than Cameroon. I used to think that if the continent organized a trophy for corruption, Cameroon will win back-to-back the continental trophy. I honestly, I'm hearing this from Ghana and I'm hearing this from South Africa, and it's mind blowing. I used to think that we're on top of it, because nothing gets practically done in Cameroon if you don't exchange envelopes. You take a document to the office, to a government office, and in the broken English they say, "Wusai my mimbo." The mimbo means drink, palm wine. In other words, what am I getting in return? What is in it for me? And it goes right to the presidency, unfortunately so. We used to have a director of civil cabinet who is like the president's personal secretary. And it was widely known that you have no access to the president of the republic if you did not bribe him. So he actually swelled his pockets. But the question is, why do we talk about corruption day in, day out, and it's not going away? And that's one of the questions of the moderator, which I think is a key component. Why is it that we talk about these things and yet it's not going away? Who benefits from it? Now, I always tell a lot of people, and I'm in a lot of WhatsApp groups, and we always disagree on this issue, the point I'm going to raise now, that the people we criticize as leaders did not come from space. They're sitting in the same pews in churches. They're in the same cultural groups. After they leave work, they are with us every day. So why is it that the moment somebody leaves from among us and becomes a general manager of a state corporation or a government minister or the president, he is doing what? When he was down, he was criticizing. In Cameroon, we've had people who have been ministers, members of government. When they were on the position, they saw everything wrong with the government. When they got there, they were doing the same thing. We've seen people who have left some of the highest, best institutions in the world, like Harvard, Princeton in the United States, Berkeley, and so on, Oxford in England, Sorbonne in France, and so on and so forth, who were critics of the government. You would think that with the exposure they have had in the West, when they go back, the story would be different. Now, before you start being hopeful, look at our cultural associations. We Cameroonians, we are clustered into a lot of cultural associations in the United States. You have the same problem of corruption there. So we are no different from the people who are back home. So if we went back home, there's no difference. So the question becomes, why? Let me explain. If you go to towns and villages in Cameroon, go to the mother selling peanuts, we call that granuts in Africa. Look at the cups which they retail the granite from. Let me call it granite because we all of us understand that. If you look at the bottom of the cup is squeezed in, that's where corruption starts. Because otherwise, you are giving the impression that you are selling a cup full of granules when it's not full, because you have smashed the under inward to give the impression that it's full. You go to our local markets, you see what we call cocoa yams in Cameroon, or yams, or cassava. It is so packed so carefully, giving the impression that the bucket is full when inside is hollow. So they carefully pile this thing up. So they're charging you an amount for something you're not getting. Now, look at finally, and I could go on and on with many examples. Finally, look at when people your daddy is looking for admission into a government secondary school or into a professional institution where you graduate and have a government job. When your father is going to bribe for you to take the place, it's okay for you because then you are the beneficiary. So now I go to answer the question, two reasons why it is continuing. Because it starts from home, it starts from families. A lion never forgets the taste of meat, fresh meat. So it starts from families. Number two, it continues because truly speaking, few Africans who talk change really want change. They complain about the system because it doesn't favor them. The moment it favors them, that's okay, it's all right, some other person's problem. The third reason why it continues is because when we talk about corruption in a lot of African groups, and I get tired of it, it is somebody's pointing the finger at someone else. So it is somebody's thing, not your thing also. Have we ever sat and asked the question, what is it that we are doing, even if inadvertently that's continuing, that's contributing to the problem we are complaining about? If we ask this all-important question, then it becomes everyone's responsibility to do what they can, where they are, and with what they have. So I will end it here for now. First of all, I'm so happy to join my African brothers and sisters. I hope I can have your numbers after this. My number, if you can write it down, Mr. Moderator, I like to share my numbers with. I like to interview a lot of you on my shows. If you just save on your phone 001-240-603-7367. And if you go on YouTube, you just search Chat Night Africa, as you see it there. That's my YouTube broadcast channel. The website is chatnightafrica.net. So I really thank you. I'm excited that we young people, we youths, are talking about this with the vehemence that it deserves. But we have to be ready to show the example where we are, with what we have, doing what we can. Thank you
so much. Wow, that's a profound one. Thank you so much. And like you ended, do what we can with what we have right where we are. And I believe these conversations in themselves is opening up the conversation. And I think what we've noted so far, even from the onset of this conversation, even from the first episode, is the fact that the family unit is actually the core. So if we are able to handle this from individual family units or from the family units, the basic units of society, then to a large extent, we are handling this issue of corruption. And in Ghana, to just bring an example, in Ghana, I am an urban planner. I work in the public sector here in Ghana. And also, I'm at the policy level. And one time I was speaking with some of my colleagues who had worked in the municipal level. We're speaking about why a lot of things, just like all of us are complaining about basic infrastructure being affected, things not working, and the municipal chief executives find themselves living lofty lives and stuff like that. And one of them just shared with us that, at the municipal level, you find that the chief executive or the mayor, depending on which country you are and how you call them, the mayor or the municipal chief executive has the ultimate power. And usually they are presidential appointees. So they tell the accountant of the municipality that I need maybe 10,000 for so and so. And the accountant can't, as it were, ask the chief executive or the mayor, what exactly are you going to use it for? Because you can't, that's your boss telling you to give him this much money. And so, and then you, the accountant, will have to find a way of recording it in the books, And then she was just trying to say that when you go to the chief executive's office, before you enter, you see people lined up, waiting to enter into the chief's office. And basically what they are going to do is someone who will come and say, my family, my husband died, we have to go for this funeral, whatever. And the chief executive will have to give some money to this person. Somebody will come, my child's school fees, so and so, the chief executive will have to give money to that person. There are several things, or people come with all kind of excuses to these politicians. And then these people have to find one way or the other to kind of help these people. And in the same way, even now in Ghana, we're talking about ex gratia. Like if you look at the economy now in Ghana, things are pretty tight. Like it's really insane. Prices of things have quadrupled. Meanwhile, salaries are the same. And you find that parliamentarians and politicians have increased their salaries. They've increased their ex gratias. And they tell public servants to tighten their belt or something. So now you find that most people in Ghana have gone on strikes. The public service, they are on strike right now. That's because we are not seeing the leaders as they were setting that kind of example for the people to follow. So, and also I feel that, like you were saying, it's all of us. This issue is we are part of the issue. The fact that people are going to these politicians to ask for money, like kind of puts pressure on these leaders to also take money from the coffers or from the public purse in order to satisfy this individual stuff. So I think it's quite complex. This is not a very simplistic. It's not simplistic at all. And to really make sense of it, we need to dissect it and reflect from our various country perspectives. Yeah, Peter. Yeah, from Tanzania. I mean, addressing the same issue. From there, I'll go to the chat and see what we have there. Yeah, Peter.
All right. I'd like to thank Mr. The previous speaker before you, Chat Night Africa.
Yeah, Chat Night Africa, yes.
Yes.
Please, what's your name? Let him mention his name again.
Oh, my name is Divine Nchamukong, Divine. Probably Divine is a lot easier. Otherwise, last name is Nchamukong. I'm from the Anglophone part of Cameroon.
Okay, great. Great stuff. I like the way you touched the issue of corruption in Africa. You have a vast experience. I would like to share with you. I didn't want to talk, but let me be sincere with you. I have experience working with the government in 2012 as a tax collector. So I was collecting. It is called the city service levy. So after the VAT tax, then you get that municipal, or there is a percentage on that. So I was very young. I was coming from seminary. I studied in a seminary. So after applying the job, then I got the job. I started working. But my seniors, they ended up, when we were going to collect taxes from the big market, it's called Kariakoo in Tanzania. It's a very big market, well known. So when I was collecting, even the police, which were protecting me from the public, the police itself was asking for me for money.
So the police was asking you for money. Wow.
On the ledger book, everything is written on this. I have to handle it for money for their families, to take care of their families. About 10 or 20 US dollars. So I used to collect more than 2 to 300 US dollar. And there was a time I collected up to 500 US dollar. So you have to write everything. So those guys with big corporation, big companies, the market, they used to call me at the back of the shop or their company to speak with the basal, okay, the accountant. They are saying, you cannot write everything about this collection. We can give you a standard of amount and put the certain, no, don't write as in the dispatch book so that you can report us to the authority. I said no. And when they tried to give me, I was trembling. Then they asked me, they called my boss, what kind of these young men you are sending them to us? So the boss was called by another boss again, saying, can you skip that company? Can you skip that shop? You understand? And I was trembling. They said that the problem of sending people from seminary, they have too much ethics and you cannot change them. But I ended up writing the company, if they are not going to pay for the tax, I'm not going to leave it, and we are going to take them to the court. I told the lawyer of the municipal. But I ended up seeing that even the lawyer at the municipal was being called at the back door and given some amount of money. But if I want to become rich at that moment, 2012, I could have VATs, probably 2.8, because you could collect money and they manipulate you, those guys, those businessmen. They manipulate you. They give you maybe 20,000 because they are collecting more than that, 20,000 USD. So you can buy a lot of car, you can buy a lot of houses, you can do whatever you want. But at that time, I was young and I was passionate, and I'm still passionate about my country. And I didn't like the way they were pushing me. So we ended up even having quarrels with the seniors that if we continue like this, we are going to smash him. So I was given also another task. I was given extra security. The auxiliary police, I had one. Now there was two, and I was given a driver. You know what happened? I collect money. I have money on my pocket, big money. The driver, the police, all of those, they're asking for money. I ended up saying, what kind of this? Now they came to explain to me that they are not getting well paid and they are not meeting their family problems, their challenges. So what I can tell is this: the syndicate of corruption, just because of our culture, we have good culture of addressing our parents, our elders in a way of seniority. You bow down to them to the extent that if they ask you anything to do, you do. Because some of the young men I was working with, they came to work there just because of written document, a written pass that accept this one to work here. You understand? So if they came by just a written document and they didn't send their CV, do you expect that they are going to do from their heart the work? They end up telling me that you'll die poor. Peter, you'll die poor. We have cars, we have houses, we have wives. Then I said, okay, it's you. But when the assessment comes, you'll be maybe terminated from work. By then I came to learn that even our parents, our elders, they are giving us such kind of bad behavior. It's called the succession planning of corruption. That if your parent has been eating from the public funds, you are also transferring it to the another generation, to your kid, and then it goes to your grandkids. Imagine if it is going to become a network like that. Now the way it has changed, even those tenders, big deals, the multinational companies which are coming to Africa, they are the biggest corrupt. I remember during the Magufuli's regime, they paid even these journalists, big companies, because let's talk about America. They have this vast of media. They can write, the Economist, they used to write rubbish about the country. You understand? They have been paid billions. So you distract by writing your country is being written in a certain way that it is distracting even foreign direct investment. And also it is calling for a new way for regime change. You understand? Because young people will be jealous. But on the ground, Magufuli was fighting, curbing those big people in the government who were eating funds, public funds. But people were not happy, especially those who used to get succession planning of corruption, those families. And they used even to write nonsense about him. Now, after he has gone to his creator, I think you have to visit Tanzania and you see what is going on, and do your own research. I don't have to speak a lot about it. Do your own research, even whatever it is going on. And now you don't even hear Tanzania. Have you ever heard Tanzania about the ongoing political issues, economic, social, the transformation or wherever? Because young people now, they think like we are now backward, or we are now forward. But they are forward in terms of media, what is the media is portraying, and if you embrace the Western media, they will embrace you. But if your country, your leaders minding their country's vital interest to develop, they become angry. They will just try to I don't know what's going on with the African young people right now.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Peter.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. I think your point is very well made. I like the expression you used, succession planning of corruption. That's a great one. Yeah, so you've made a really good point, and I think these are takeaways for us in this conversation. I'd like to read some of the comments in the chat, and then I'll come to Chico. Hamed Adebo says, corruption in Nigeria permeates all sectors. Worse is that agencies put in place to curb corruption are even corrupt. And then Bolenle says, Mrs. Arinola, yeah, good presentation. Ahmed says, because of corruption, young guys who should be actively engaged are now running errands for politicians to get their favors at the expense of those who are more competent. Yeah, we need to call them to order. I read that says. And then let's see. Africa needs more action and less talk. Yeah, that's true. You know, so thank you so much. And I see that Bright Sowu has joined us from Ghana. And I also see Damaris Aswa from Kenya. She was part of the panelists for the previous conversation. Damaris, welcome. So let's go to Chugo now. Chugo, yes, please. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Chugo. I'm Nigerian, but I work in Norway on extractive sector transparency. So my work is actually working on anti-corruption in the oil, gas, and mining sector. And in this area, we see a lot of corruption. First of all, just to say a few caveats. First, that corruption is an abuse of human rights because you're stealing from future generations. Secondly, just to echo some statements made before by Peter, that corruption is a system. It's a cycle that perpetuates itself if we don't stop it. Third is that corruption permeates almost every sector of our lives in Africa, be it in the education system, healthcare, worse in the oil and gas sector. So it doesn't stop at the top. It permeates down to the bottom. And I know the representative from Nigeria is also here. You don't need to look very far for examples of corruption. Basically, look at the cost of forms to run for office. At some 4 or 5 years ago, we had this not too young to run bill where we were encouraging young Africans to run for office. And this was supported by many partners, many donor funds, etc. But now we have the cost of running for office, which is exorbitant, that young people cannot afford, even if they work from now to their 90s. So first of all, you have that political system where you have the form for one of the parties, 100 million naira, another one, 40 million naira. And there's so many people coming out to run. So I asked myself, where is electoral transparency in this country? How do we track revenues and track resources that are being pushed into this system? The second question is, how is this money being used? Are they actually being used to ensure electoral transparency? Will the person who gets the most votes win? And thirdly, after these people who have paid so much money get into office, what is to prevent them from emptying the coffers of our country to pay back the loans they have taken to even buy a simple form? We're not talking about the cost of running for office. We're not even talking about the cost of campaigns. We're talking about so much just to buy a form. Why is this necessary? The second thing I want, and I'm happy that brother from the DRC is here, Gérard. So I'm actually working on DRC extractive sector and artisanal and small scale mining for cobalt, copper, and the amount of corruption in DRC, not just from national actors, but also from international actors who see the DRC as a place to come, steal minerals, and go. So there is no transparency along the extractive value chain. And this is really, really sad in the way we even give contracts. So I know that a speaker from South Africa mentioned allocation of tenders and allocation of contracts, the place where there's so much corruption. This corruption is so documented, and we do nothing about it. So I agree that we start from the individual level, but we should not hesitate to call out corruption where we see it. Start from there at least. We have social media, we have the power of youth. The youth make up more than 50% of Africa's population. If we do band together, we can at least make that an evident issue that people have to take into consideration when running for office. We should make running for office with a corrupt background illegal in our country. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's well said. We should make running for office with a corrupt background illegal. That was a bang. Thank you so much, Chugo. And Gerald, you're there. So please, over to you. And then we'll hear from Bright. So Gerald, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Tugor, as she has given very specific example of my country. That's true. Yeah, that's true, and I'm very sorry to say that. Okay, about corruption. Corruption is something which really hinders a country's development, and there is very good approaches that countries should use to fight against corruption. Myself, I'm a change makers Everywhere Academy Fellow. It's called the Change Makers Everywhere Academy. It's an academy organized by Ashoka. And fortunately, I really received a very good lessons about corruption, about how we can fight all bad problems that our countries are facing. So there is a systems change approach that should be used to fight against corruption. So I invite you to think about how we can change systems in our countries, because when we tackle corruption, we must think about the causes, the root causes of that corruption. What are the root causes? Okay, so when we try to see things, we must know that we have got institutions. Okay, there are too many institutions that are at the heart of corruption in our countries. And we must work with those institutions and teach them how they have to be honest and how they must work to help the country. Because as I said before, I said earlier, corruption does not help the country as a whole. It's something that benefits individuals, okay? And it has got very, very bad consequences on the country's development. So that is what you have to know. We must fight against the root causes of corruption in our countries. That is what I would like to share with you. And I would like to propose you to take part in this wonderful Change Makers Everywhere Academy. Please, when there is something new about the course, I will tell you so that you can join and get subscribed for the course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jared. All right, so right, I think this is the second episode, right? And what we are doing with these beginning episodes is to expose corruption and how it materializes in our various contexts. And then subsequent episodes, we're going to now go into the driving factors or the driving forces, and then try to come up with ideas as to how we feel, and from the exposure we've had, how we can tackle these at these different levels. So, Bright, over to you.
Hi, Dennis. Thank you very much. Sorry to have joined in late. Good afternoon to everybody. Good evening to some of you, I suppose. What's the question right now? What the bit are we tackling?
Okay, so we began, the first episode, we looked at the corruption from Kenya. We looked at it from the context of, there was Kenya, DRC, of course, Ghana. And today we are looking at it from the perspective of South Africa, Tanzania, Nigeria. And of course, you, Bride, you've traveled across Africa extensively on the ticket of anti-corruption, training people, engaging with several organizations across the continent. So at least when you speak, you don't speak only from the Ghanaian perspective. So we also want to have a feel of your understanding about corruption across, over your experience, these years of experience in the space, and what you've seen across these countries. And of course, Ghana is your main space. Some of the facts you gave the other time were really profound. And I shared recently, just within this conversation, I said that someone indicated that she was applying for a job in the public sector in Ghana, and she was asked to pay 6,000 cedis, that to even get the chance of getting that job. So it speaks to the fact that what you are saying is in line. It speaks to. So if you also have some facts or more stuff to share with the Ghanaian context too, that's good to have. Right. So over to you.
Thank you, Dennis. Again, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I think you mentioned all these countries. The experience will not be too different, will not differ really so much across the countries. I think last year I read an article on the Washington Post. The title was "Why are Africans dissatisfied with democracy?" It's a question. Why are Africans dissatisfied with democracy? Then it continued, think corruption. So that's the title. Why Africans dissatisfied with democracy, think corruption. If you see, for example, in West Africa, what has happened even during the last 2 years, you've seen coup d'etats in Guinea, you've seen it in Burkina Faso, you've seen it in Mali. There's a very common denominator. That denominator is that, and coups that, apart from the 80s and 90s, or even the 70s that were quite popular, if you did a coup in West Africa in the early 2000s, I mean, people will rise up against you. Today, although there is not an express support for the coups, even in Ghana, I'm sure you heard some people calling for we need a military regime again, because the point being, people are simply dissatisfied with a democratic dispensation that is not delivering social goods. Now, it's not because democracy itself inherently is incapable of delivering these goods. It's because we are currently in a system where there's a capture of it, and because of that, corruption is blocking social goods from coming down to the people, which is creating a bit of anger and resentment. Now, in any democracy, the number one bulwarks or bastions of that democracy have to be the citizens. You go beyond that, then is the public accountability institutions that have to step in and ensure that corruption is reduced in the country. They are checking corruption, which is why we have all these arrangements put in place. Separation of power between the executive, between the judiciary and the legislature. And within the executive, you still have independent institutions that are the power of the executive. What has happened is that some of the assumptions that underpin the constitutions that we wrote, and I use Ghana's own as an example, have not been valid currently. Now, if you look at Ghana's constitution, 1992 constitution, even the key accountability institutions, appointment of that leadership is done by the president, who is the executive. And almost every appointment done by the president. I want to believe the assumption of the drafters of the constitution was that the president of the land will be the number one patriot of the land. He wants to be the one to, as it were, protect the public purse, fight corruption. As such, you give him the power to elect people who he believes have the integrity and have the values and have the commitment to fight corruption together with him and, you know, basically protect the public purse. Some 30 years down the line in Ghana, you look at it and you're not sure that the presidents really are the number one patriots of the land and they really want to fight corruption and they have interest in fighting corruption. So that assumption, which allowed us to give the executive so much power, is beginning to sound a bit invalid. That's why people are also calling for some review of certain amendments in our various constitutions, basically across the continent. If you come to the level of the anti-corruption institutions or accountability institutions, the leadership is also either become quite timid or even totally bought. So you have president executives putting family members, friends, party members into those positions just to make sure that they are unable to, in a very committed way, in a very non-partisan way, prosecute the issue of corruption. So you've got all these anti-corruption institutions that basically they're sort of toothless because the people there themselves, the leadership is not keen to. Now, when you have very keen leadership, as we saw in Ghana with the audit service and the former auditor general, they find ways and means to take them out. And I'm sure you know the story. It happened in March, somewhere last year, 2021. When we dismissed our auditor general, in November, Sierra Leone also dismissed the auditor general. Just weeks before the auditor general was about to come with the 2020, which also be the COVID expenditure reports, they took the auditor general and the deputy out of office because they were part of that particular audited. Now, this ability of the executive to do that, because you see, no matter what arrangement you put in place, you got to give power to somebody to act and to protect the public purse. It appears that we've given all the power to the president, to the executive, and they've not been the most patriotic people that we need to go to do this, which means that responsibility must sort of whistle down to the people. I don't know about the other African countries, not so much about it, but in Ghana's case, the people are so divided on partisan lines, they're unable to, as a people, act. In every true democracy, the real battle is between the governor, the ones in charge, the ones with power, and the governed, the ones on the demand side of things. But if you have the demand side, which is the citizens divided on partisan lines and cannot collectively give a stronger voice and say, ABC is going wrong, we don't want it, we want a change, then it allows whatever the situation is to perpetuate, because people simply, as it were, the state simply has nobody biting and throwing hands to go to, as it were, force a reform. So that's the situation where we are in now. And again, when my other colleagues from other countries talk about all kinds of corruption in procurement, in employment, it's all a manifestation of an elite that is extremely corrupt, that wants to use the institution of the state to amass money for themselves, that no longer listen to citizens' voice, and they'll use every way, including force in some countries, to make sure and to suppress any dissent or any anti-corruption voice within those countries. But not to sound too negative and just raise the issues. Like you said, we have a huge youth force. What is that youth force across other African countries doing? And in this generation, we are quite gifted in the sense that a number of our youth are also finding themselves in top positions. Some are becoming ministers in countries. Some are anti-corruption commissioners. I know of Kefala in Sierra Leone, very young man who's the anti-corruption commissioner. And while people like Kefala are doing a great job, you find also a lot of our own people, our youth, as soon as they find themselves in that position, also sort of go with the culture, the prevailing culture. And I think that's where the battle is. That if you're unable to arrest the minds of the youth and say to them, look, we know you see this particular system that's not based on meritocracy, and it's all about money, and whoever has money gains the power, whoever has the money buys their way into a position, where the money gets everything. But we've got to reverse the trend for the benefit of all of us. So for me, I think the challenge lies with being able to arrest the mind of the youth and say, we have a culture that is not helping everybody. And even if you're benefiting, eventually you're not really benefiting, because, I mean, no matter how rich you are, if everybody else is so poor and decide to attack your house and steal from you, you put your life and your property at danger as well. So I think that's what we need to focus on. I'm sure one of the participants have spoken about that the youth culture, which also seems to be following that same trend, that is thinking, look, this is what the system is, and let's play according to the rules. Let's be able to put up a new intervention where the youth feel empowered enough to say, listen, this may be what the system is, but I feel empowered to change it, to change the narrative, to change the culture, not to follow through, what is happening. So it's just in a very brief nutshell, from both a historical point of view and where we are, I think these are the most challenging issues with corruption for us.
Thank you so much. Empower the youth to put up a new intervention, more like a change of mindset. In the chat, I see that we have Alumba Munak. He says, good afternoon and evening. This is Munachanga from Ndola, Zambia. Indeed, corruption has corruptly changed many landscape of development. I work for a local NGO, Ndola Nutrition. Sometimes even to access funding, especially local funding, the noses of corruption is also prevalent. I think we need to form well-established task forces with no local strings attached to talk and discuss corruption in various countries. Sometimes task forces are compromised because of strings attached to local context and leadership. All right, thank you very much for that. So, Devashini, we've not heard from you in a while. We're opening up the conversation. If anybody wants to have some thoughts to share, you have a question, this is the time for you. Devashini, do you have anything to share so far?
Okay, in my closing, I would just like to highlight the importance of moral compasses in a human being. I've heard speakers say that sometimes your excuse for corruption is, I do not earn enough to support my family. But the reality is that you do have enough. It is your greed for more that expands the notion of having enough would never be enough. And I'd like to just continue to create an environment, especially, I love what everybody is speaking about, because then it was confirmation for me that I was also in the right path of dialogue. Was it starts in the home. It desperately starts with us as older, wiser, moral compass individuals to say to the youth and to the youngsters that there is a very solid line between right and wrong. And I like the way one of the speakers expressed that it's a trembling feeling when you're doing something wrong. That is your conscience saying to you that what you're doing is wrong. You shouldn't do this. The implications, and I think the rich will never see the implications of corruption, because the rich just remain richer and the poor just remain poor. But that is what you are taking away from the world. If you do corruption, you're taking from the people that don't have. And can you honestly live with yourself? Would all the riches in the world really fulfill that desire within you to say, I have enough? It would never, because your moral compass has been destroyed. And that hunger and that greed internally for more will never satisfy your conscience, because that's what would eat you up. You did something wrong. So that's what I'd like to say with closing. And I really hope, that each country from whether it's a task force, whether it is like we have the whistleblowers, but to be able to bold enough and stand up against it and say, we have to own it and we have to be responsible to say what you're doing is wrong. And the larger majority have to really out and say, enough is enough, because you're destroying our future generations, you're destroying our countries. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, as you were speaking, it just came to mind how, when people siphon money, they end up putting them in offshore accounts. And sometimes these monies, they never get access to it. So basically what they are doing is they are robbing the public and they are putting the money somewhere else to aid or to support the others in these Western countries. It's just insane. I don't know how our people are thinking.
I enjoy talking about African affairs a lot, even on my shows. I keep saying that we Africans socialize a lot, but we don't network a lot. We don't network as much as we socialize. I'm believing that what we are doing today, I don't know if this is a continuation of what you, the moderator, you've been doing with other Africans. But if not, I'm believing that if it's just starting today, then it's a great start. I'm believing that we are all here because we don't like the status quo. And if we don't like the status quo, we have to do something about it. If we have to do something about it, it stretches beyond just talking. I keep saying that corruption it has developed roots, eucalyptus type tap roots, because it starts from very low levels. Low levels. The father is not being accountable to the wife. Being accountable to a wife is seen as weakness. Again, sometimes it's cultural. You think that if you tell your wife, this is how much you spend, this is what you have, you are being weak, you are no longer a man. And this is how we begin to implant that seed of corruption. I told you about the case of Cameroon. I don't know whether it happens in other African countries, where you see some mother selling groundnuts, retailing groundnut from a cup, and under the cup is squeezed inward to give the impression that the groundnut is full cup when it's half cup. And I could go on and on. This is how we start training ourselves corruption. How about the dad who wants admission for his son or daughter in a school and would not want the child to sit an entrance exam and pass like other children? And we look at it, since it favors us, it's okay. So unless we begin to tackle these things where we are, corruption, we'll talk about corruption the next 60 years to come. Here is my suggestion. Scripture says, be the light. And I say scripture, I'm sure that other holy books will say the same thing. They cannot say the opposite. But because I'm Christian, let me say what I know. Christian scripture says, be the light of the world. Be the salt of the earth. I am saying that wherever you are, whether in the office or in a barber shop to cut your hair, let people look at you and see you thinking different and doing things different. If we don't start doing that, we'll talk about corruption for the next 60 years. I'm suggesting I put out my number. I'd like to connect with all the brothers and sisters who have had some really brilliant things, ideas emitted on this. Okay, very good. I've listened to really brilliant minds, young people, not the old people who are retiring and who don't want to retire. I've heard that. You have my number. Please, let's connect. I'm on WhatsApp. Let's network and not only socialize. I really thank you. I love you. I send you all love from Washington, D.C.
Thank you so much, Mr. Divine. It's great. And we're excited to have you And we look forward to, as you say, network and to advance this conversation. So this is actually a series that we are doing, and the organization is Voice One Africa. Voice One Africa is a Pan-African youth movement. I just shared our link in the channel. So we are into youth empowerment through networking and capacity building. And these conversations are part of the works that we do. So there's a new series we've started on the Anti-corruption Syndicate. This is the second episode, and we'll have it running. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Is it Ruth? Ruth, I see your hands up. Let's have you.
Hello, good day, everyone.
Hi. Okay.
All right. Actually, I'm Emmanuel. Just that is the name that appears on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Seriously, there is a saying that says when you saw a fight and it's overpowered you, you should just turn it to play. But corruption in African is not something that we should joke on it. As I comment on the comment section, African needs more action, less talk. If you check out, we have been talking several occasions. I grew up to see they are talking about corruption, and they are still talking about corruption. Actions are not being put in on, because the corruption rates have reached to the extent that nobody can say anything. Like in my country here, Nigeria, due to how the rate of corruption and the bad leaders, bad followers we have, you cannot come to voice out anything. You can't come to voice out anything. So I think instead of we talking much about the causes, we should be talking about the solution, which I want to talk pertaining the citizens, which is from the grassroots. The citizens, education is one of the key that will enlighten our mind for every citizen to know his left and right. Because without someone being educated, you won't know what is going on. Imagine our African leaders going to the to the British country to collect loan. For what reason? We have our resources, we have everything that can generate money and make our currency more value than what we are collecting. But you found out that we are just collecting papers, giving out resources to outsiders, and our country is not being developed. Every African is running out to foreign lands, going to the British, Canada, and so on, to go and live a good life there. Why? It's not that they don't have, they have everything more than us, but because of the corrupt situation that we are into, and nobody is really ready to fight. Nobody is ready to talk. For instance, Mr. A will be waiting for Mr. B to talk. Why? Because of fear. So we, the citizen, we need education. We need to educate the grassroots citizen, the citizen that don't know anything about government, don't know about anything about leadership, economy. So we need to come up with enlightenment strategies that will help us
there's a need for more. So that what you're saying is that there's a need for more training, education. For people, so that they'll be able to speak up.
Yes, because the level of orientation is low. It's low.
Okay.
And then the leaders.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Wasted your time.
Thank you. So, yeah. So for what Emmanuel is saying is that we need education, because it's what it seems to be that people are kind of timid, or people feel that they don't have, the average person feels that probably I don't have what it takes to question, I don't have enough knowledge to be able to question what's ongoing. So if we are able to educate the general populace about some of these things, and even the structures, how to go about handling or reporting an issue, these transparency issues and reporting issues, whistleblowing channels and stuff like that, this would be great avenues. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Those were very good points. I'm reading from the chat, then I'll come to Petro. We'll be running up in the next 10 minutes. Daveshni says, thanks Voice One Africa for this amazing opportunity to share my thoughts. And thank you all for those that have contributed. And she says it was such a great honor to be a part of the speakers and such a wealth of knowledge and experience. Thank you. Arinola says, yeah, great to be here and with you all. Yeah, Daveshni is saying that indeed we started agreeing with Emmanuel. He says that we started giving away our wealth from the beginning of time of trade, much of little, and now not having is our reason to take more than we need. Okay, thank you so much for all the comments and questions that are coming in. Petro, you may be our last participant speaking, and then we'll hear from, I don't know, maybe Damaris, and then we'll be out of here. So yeah, Petro.
Hi everyone. Good evening. So my name is Petro Mwanya. I'm a poet. I'm an artist, a poet, a writer, author of my first book, which is called My First Mosaic. Also been featured in an anthology that recently was published. Yeah, I'm glad that tonight we're speaking about this so relevant topic of corruption. Yeah, and reflecting on whatever that everything that we've said tonight, I would also like to make my comments, which is corruption has become normal. It has become a part of our lives, unfortunately, and pathetically. It has become like that. So we see it as being normal. It's in our everyday life. We see it everywhere, and then we have become apathic to the topic. We don't even talk about it. We see it as being okay, right? And as some of us did mention it, whenever corruption does benefit our interest, we do not we feel it is a good thing, and when it doesn't, it become a bad thing, and that's where the problem starts. That's where it lies. Yeah, so corruption has become a core part of our lives, and it's very unfortunate. But I'm so glad that there are people amongst us that are still brave enough and are still audacious also enough to stand out, to stand up as one voice and speak against corruption fearlessly. As I heard my brother in his tone, just in the tone, you'd feel that there is a certain extent of audaciousness and fearlessness that is expressed. And that's what we need, because I believe we're running a revolution. This is for us a revolution. If we have to change, if we have to bring about change, we have to be radical to a certain extent, yes, to change things. And that's why we call it a revolution. It's a drastic change of our mentality, change of everything that we've been doing. Is in order for us to shift the paradigms, right? So I'm glad that we at this level and with this small group that will influence the rest of Africa and bring about change. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
I really am glad.
Thank you, Petro.
So
yeah, so Petro is one of the leaders in the South African chapter for Voice One Africa, and I'm excited. I also see Eric. Eric, if you could just, Eric is also the leader of Voice One Africa in Burkina Faso. Monsieur Eric, do you have some words to share? Maybe just a brief one, and then we'll move on.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, I've been following different conversations, and it's really, really important that we have to step out now and carried out more actions to fight against corruption. Corruption is everywhere, like Patriot just said, and it's part of our responsibility as young people from every country. We have to step out. We have to develop new ideas. We have to come together to fight against corruption. So I'm so happy I learned a lot of from you all. Thank you so much. And yeah, let's keep going on, and let's keep fighting. And let's keep this conversation going on for the better of Africa. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, so I'm sharing the link for Voice One Africa in the chat. You can join our WhatsApp group, and then we'll give you all the details. We have 23 countries represented in Voice One Africa across the continent. We don't have chapters in all the countries yet, but we have chapters in a couple of countries. Yeah, so you can join our WhatsApp platform, and then you could champion the Pan-African agenda. I think it's been a wonderful conversation. Damaris, it's good to have you. It's good to have everybody here. And before we close out, once again, want to appreciate the Mandela Institute for Development Studies based in South Africa, Joburg, for hosting us, co-hosting this with us. This is a Voice One Africa run program, but we're hosted by the Mandela Institute for Development Studies in South Africa. So thank you, everyone, all the panelists. We are grateful. And for the participants, we are grateful as well. We'll carry this conversation on. The video will be available on our YouTube channel. We're trying to create snippets of it to push it out there. So when we share them, please pick it up and also distribute it so that it will reach the people, it will reach far, it will reach more people. So thank you very much. On this note, we say bye-bye. Thank you. Ciao.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you, Dennis. Awesome.
Yeah, goodbye. Thanks.